Welcome, it's Charter California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. Over this half hour, we'll be speaking about education, K-12 education, as well as community college education. And we start with the president of the Riverside Community College District. Her name is Virginia Blumenthal. She was just reelected to that position. We congratulate you.
Thank you very much.
Very pleased, I'm sure. RCC, one of the nicer, bigger community college districts in California. Tell us a bit about it.
Yes, Riverside Community College District. We actually have 3 certified, fully accredited colleges, Moreno Valley College, Norco College, and Riverside City College. And we have approximately close to 60,000 students.
Remarkable. And what's nice about RCC is because within Riverside, there are 3 higher education institutions that offer 4-year degrees, UCR, Cal Baptist, and La Sierra, there's a nice pipeline between RCC, and then of course UCI is not far, Cal State San Bernardino is not far. So I understand that your success rates are fairly high.
Yes, they are. We have an excellent relationship with Cal State Fullerton and Cal State University at San Bernardino.
It's interesting, people don't realize how close Riverside County is to Orange County. I mean, it's right there.
That's right.
It's literally right there. You just go, was it the 91 freeway? I mean, it's so close. Anaheim's over the hill.
We have working agreements, though, with those institutions. If our students get a certain GPA and take so many classes, they are guaranteed acceptance.
It kind of begs the question, if I may then. We talked about this before, but let's go there again, is this notion of whether community colleges should offer 4-year degrees. And one of the arguments against is, well, we don't need to because, like what you just described, if you get a certain GPA at RCC, you can go right into Fullerton, you can go right into Cal State San Bernardino. What do you think?
I believe that community colleges should be able to offer bachelor's degrees in certain areas and limit it. For example, for our district, I believe that Riverside City College should be able to offer nursing degrees, bachelor's nursing degrees, because we have one of the finest nursing programs in the state of California. We have everything there to give them their bachelor's degree. We have all of our professors either have their in nursing, either have their PhD or are very close to completion.
And when you think about UCR having just opened its medical school,
that's correct.
More nurses are going to be needed, even aside from UCR Med. There's a lack of nurses in our state of California. And so how close are we? We've talked about this recently, but I know that Bryce Harris, who chairs Community College Foundation, he's looking at this issue.
We have volunteered to be a pilot program.
Oh, really?
I can't tell you we've gotten that far yet, but we do have more open, willing ears than we've ever had before.
A couple of years ago, I know that Senator Marty Block of San Diego proposed legislation to allow this. The legislation died, but you know, times may have changed.
We have to look at a different way of financing education and a different way of structuring it. And these are the types of things, and when you have a community college that is known for its nursing program, we have the faculty ready to do it, we have the facilities, we have a brand new nursing building.
You're ready to go.
We're ready to go, and that's the ideal time to try it out.
And so, given that you're ready to go, do you think the state is ready to go?
I'm not sure of that, but because we would be volunteering as a pilot program, they may consider that.
Speaking of pilot programs, as you may know, there is a pilot program that's launched recently at Long Beach City College. And that pilot program focuses on what's known as intercession classes.
Correct.
You know as well as anyone that during this last recession, the community college system contracted, offering fewer sections, and it was becoming increasingly difficult, increasingly challenging for students to matriculate out because they couldn't get the degrees or the classes they needed to get to Cal State Fullerton because they didn't have the classes available. So Long Beach City College worked with Assemblyman Doss Williams from Santa Barbara to create a pilot program whereby LBCC and 5 other institutions, not RCC, would be allowed to offer intercession classes winter break at a rate that was higher than the rest of the year, a non-resident rate. Governor Brown did sign the pilot program. It's caused a tremendous amount of controversy. Pasadena City College, part of the pilot program, they declined. Oxnard College, part of the program, they declined. The other 3 are evaluating. What's your sense?
I believe that that type of legislation goes entirely against what community colleges stand for. I'm very strongly opposed to that.
Get to the point. You're right.
And let me explain why, if I may. You're charging students more to take the same classes is what you're doing.
You are.
Now, if you want to charge more for those types of classes that cost more, such as
Right.
nursing.
Okay.
Physician's assistant program, where you can only have one professor for every 8 students, not one professor for 35 to 50 students, then I could see having differential tuition for those types of classes, because when those people graduate, they're guaranteed a higher salary.
What about the argument, though, that because even though we've turned the corner, there are still not enough sections for these impacted classes? And if you don't have intercession, that means you have to wait another semester or another year to get the class you need. And so in the end, even though you may pay more in December, you're going to wind up paying more because you're going to be at school an extra year.
The students going through don't have the money to pay for that in between. And so they don't get it at all. If they don't have the money to pay for that higher tuition rate, they don't get any of the classes. It's not a matter of they're on a waiting list. They get none of those classes. And so now we are doing that which goes against the entire mission statement of community colleges, and that's for providing education for those that don't have the means to get it.
It is an interesting debate. As you may know, Governor Brown issued a signing statement saying, let's at least try it. Rarely does a governor issue a statement when he's signing a bill, but I guess he wanted to make that statement that he was willing to give it a shot. It's a 5-year program. It sunsets in 2018. If it's successful, is it worth looking at?
I don't believe so. Let me share with you also
Please.
why. While we took the same types of financial hits in our district as
No
every
doubt.
other district
Yeah, no
around,
doubt.
in fact, if not more, we never stopped our intercessions.
At the rate that was charged for other
That's
sessions.
correct. Now, did we cut back on the number of sessions overall that's available? Yes, we have to, because 85% of our budget's made up of salaries. When you get a 40% hit overall, that's the only place that you can cut. And yet we're there for the students. So the first things that we have done as things are starting to turn around, that we're not there by any means, is we're adding sessions, we're adding classes.
You're bringing them back.
That's correct.
Part of the reason you're able to do that is we have turned the corner. We know that Prop 30 didn't specifically funnel money to community colleges, but we do know, and I'm shocked to say these words, there's a budget surplus in California. And Governor Brown has made it very clear he wants to see a nice chunk of that overage to go to education. But he's been the biggest fan of K-12. He has said that some of that overage could go to community colleges, but what can the system do to try to gain some of that excess that the state is now funding itself?
To a certain extent, well, I believe the community colleges need much more percentage than what they're currently getting. If the K through 12s would in fact utilize that money where we do not need to offer remedial classes, then, I mean, that is such a large percentage of the classes that we have to offer
Is it?
remedial classes, yes. If we didn't have to offer those classes, we could probably offer most of the classes that students would need and they could get in. That's where some of the issues are, is when we get these students who have graduated with full high school diplomas, they're not ready for college. My concern is give all that money to K through 12s, and unless they somehow change the approach and somehow change what the requirements are, then we will still get a lot of those students who are remedial students.
Do you feel as if through the adoption of Common Core, which is changing the way students will be educated, it's not a community college initiative, and instead of teaching students a lot, or let me say, kind of a little about a lot, they're going to teach them a lot about less. Did I say that correctly? They're going to go a little deeper.
I'm not sure. I understand the concept and I'm not opposed to it, but I also know in the old days, you could teach them a lot about a little and they still came out educated, they still came out literate. I don't know what's changed on that. I will tell you though, Riverside Community College District has been proactive with high schools in the unified school districts in our RCC district. We are working with those high school students where they are taking, those students who would be remedial, they are taking classes online to bring them current. And by working with that and going through all of the testing ahead of time, taking the classes so they can pass that testing, we have guaranteed them a spot.
Says a lot.
And the percentage of increase of students that are coming to us that are now literate has significantly increased from those students going through that program.
She's Virginia Blumenthal. When we come back, we'll be speaking with one of her colleagues, Nathan Miller. He is Secretary of the Riverside Community College District. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's Charter California Edition.
What is the oldest existing community college in the state of California? Bakersfield College, Fresno City College, San Francisco City College, or Santa Barbara City College? The oldest existing community college in California is Fresno City College, operational since 1910.
It's Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Our guest, Nathan Miller. He is now secretary of the Riverside Community College District, which means what? What does secretary mean?
I get to sign things.
You get to sign things? No, but it's nice. I mean, after a year, to have your colleagues nominate you and elect you.
It's an officer position. It's one that I hope to, opportunity I hope to perform admirably.
Right. So let's talk about the last year. You had worked in politics for electeds in the past, and now you're the elected.
Right.
And I knew you both as the staffer and now as the elected. It's got to feel a little different, my friend.
It is. You know, the biggest challenge for me, you know, moving into the role of, I guess, a policymaker in a sense, is, you know, understanding my role. It's unique. You know, there's this argument over the do's and don'ts of what you do as an elected official. It's different as a trustee. It's different as a council member. You know, there are similarities, but there are specific legal differences. And then there are those gray areas where they say, you know, trustees aren't to do this because it would look bad with accreditation. And I think that there's definitely a scare tactic involved in that, where you know, staff tries to rein in trustees' ability to, you know, use the bully pulpit, but you don't want to get carried away with it, right? I mean, there are those trustees that every time they have something to say about everything, it adds an extra 2 hours to a meeting, unnecessary 2 hours, and it's all about them and people knowing about how they feel about something, how great. And
what's interesting about trustees, most city council, is they're not full-time positions.
No.
And so you have your life.
Well, it's not officially a full-time position, but you know, there's our meetings, right? We have our committee meeting, we have a board meeting, 2 meetings. I have a standing meeting with the chancellor. I'm constantly talking with specific staff folks that I need to have a relationship with, people that chair the facilities, et cetera.
But that's part of the point is that.
But then there's all these events that go on, and we have a 3 college campus district. So, you know, I don't want to spend. I'm elected in Corona, Norco, and Eastvale, and I want to. You know, all things being equal, if 3 things were happening at the same time, I'll probably go to Norco because that's, you know, where I should be.
Where you are elected by districts.
But I'm not going to neglect Moreno Valley and Riverside. The entire district is important to me. I have 3 very unique personalities and attributes, and I love all the stuff that gets put on at all the 3 different campuses.
But what becomes challenging, as I was suggesting, is that Riverside Community College District, it's a huge system, 3 colleges educating tens of thousands of students, and yet you're this elected official who has a staff that's full-time, but you're setting the policy. I mean, I have always found it quite odd that folks that have such important roles are part-time officials.
There are a lot of folks that would probably disagree with you, and they'd like to see more elected officials
state legislatures.
in a part-time status.
Yeah, I mean, many state legislatures
which
are
I would argue against.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the first thing is, you know, there are budget constraints.
Right.
I mean, should you really pay a trustee for the Riverside Community College District hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars, you know, to fill that role? And what does that take away from? You know, it really personifies the idea that what we do is about public service. You know, I'm a believer in that role.
I get that, but how many people can have essentially a second full-time job? Because that's essentially what you have, and you have 3 kids at home. I mean,
well, and I think that goes to the point that in the role that I serve, or even in city council, quite often you see folks that are, you know, closer to the age of retirement.
Right.
So you don't have as many young people, because if I have a full-time job and a family, it can be a strain. So, you know, it's up to the individual in terms of how much time they're willing to give to it and how important it is to them.
Well, let's talk about some policy, because there is no question.
I knew you were going to get to policy.
It had to happen.
Policy is important.
It's very important. And a major policy shift occurred in Sacramento this year. It's a pilot program, but be that as it may, I do want to speak to you about it. A lot of consternation surrounding it. It deals with intercession, usually winter, could be summer as well. And Long Beach City College spearheaded this effort whereby 6 campuses out of the 112 would be permitted to participate in this pilot program. Through the program, they could offer impacted classes, but charge higher rates, non-resident rates. The only campus that has agreed to do it is Long Beach City College. 2 of them have declined, the 2 out of the 6, and the 3 others are investigating.
So it's interesting that they declined. Why were they considered to begin with?
Yeah, I know.
So they're going to be put in the project and then they decline. Why were they even named?
Yeah,
that sounds weird.
Yeah, it sounds odd to me, and I've asked that question. I guess there was a policy shift, at least at PCC.
Okay, so as the legislation came forward, they didn't like what it looked like.
So be that as it may. Now, RCC is not part of this pilot program, but what do you think about it, kind of philosophically?
Well, first of all, I'm a fan of pilot programs. That at least appear reasonable on their face because they have a beginning and an end.
Right.
It's a trial period, and if it's successful, I mean, and there are students and other folks that benefit from it. It's worth taking a shot. I mean, our educational system in California needs a tune-up. I don't think anybody disagrees with that, from the governor on down. And for different reasons, people would agree with that.
But it's interesting you mentioned why not try it, because the governor actually issued a signing statement. It's not very often that a governor will issue a signing statement. A veto statement, sure.
I'm surprised Brown doesn't issue more
signing statements. But this governor doesn't. But in this case, he did, and essentially he said, why not try it? I mean, it's just a pilot program. It's only 6 years. But, Bryce Harris, who's the chair of the California Community College system, I mean, he came out against it with guns a-blazing.
Well, I don't know what interests were involved. Usually with folks like Bryce Harris or others, there are specific interests that guide their thoughts. And I'm not saying that other interests do their thinking for them.
No, I understand.
But maybe they were of the same mindset, and that's why he ended up where he did. And so those are shared values.
But as a general proposition, you don't have a huge issue with this pilot program. I mean, try it.
No. As I understand it, the argument against it is community colleges are about accessibility. And when it was mentioned to me, my thought was, okay, that's the argument against it. People are saying it's basically a Pandora's box. If you open up this opportunity for community colleges to make more money and then take that money, by charging local students more, but they can offer more classes that way, then when does it go away?
But couldn't one argue that if the class is impacted, that means they have to wait another semester or another year to get that class in order to graduate? And that's going to cost more money because they're sticking around for another year.
Interesting you say that, because the talk about, when you talk about legislation or why we want to do things, Proposition 30, for example, it's all about pragmatism. What do we need right now and what's important? Now, I had argued against Proposition 30 on its principle because it's basically rewarding people that were poor fiscal stewards of our taxpayer dollars, right? But that's, you could argue that that's a Pandora's box that you open up, and time and time again, every time our state gets into trouble, they ask certain class of folks to bail them out. Okay, so they do that. Here we have a situation where students can't get classes, right? All across the state. Some community colleges more than others. Some community colleges have more impacted classes than others. Maybe these community colleges happen to have a significant amount of students that just can't get their classes. So these students need them. What are you going to do? On principle, hold back this idea that you don't want to give these students their classes because opening up this Pandora's box of charging more means that may never go away. So these students have to suffer. So that's the other argument against it. It's a pilot program, so there's a beginning and an end. And if there are students and the market can bear it and students are willing to pay it, maybe it's worth taking a shot.
Okay, his name is Nathan Miller. He is now the secretary of the Riverside Community College District. When we come back, we'll be speaking with Ben Johnson. He is a trustee at the Alvord Unified School District. That's a K-12 district. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's Charter California Edition.
How many community colleges operate in the United States? 752, 821, 986, or 1,132? According to the American Association of Community Colleges, 1,132 community colleges are operating in the United States.
Welcome back to Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance, and we are joined by Ben Johnson. He is the Vice President of the Alvord School District, which is centered in Riverside County. He's also a candidate for the Board of Trustees of Riverside's Community College District. And I want to speak with you about that first before we talk about K-12.
Thank you.
You may have heard that the Community College District statewide, the big kahuna, the one who oversees 112 community colleges, the system is looking at whether California's community colleges should be permitted to grant 4-year degrees. What do you think of that?
I think it's about time.
Really?
If you look back, the 1960 plan that kind of designed
Right.
the model of what California's community higher education was supposed to do, I think it was appropriate for that time. But as our economy continues to get worse, and you look at how much it costs to go to a UC or even a Cal State, $1,000, for every year to get your 4-year degree at a community college is exceptional. I think it's got to be very limited to what areas we look at.
And let's talk about that, because I know, for example, Michigan recently
Right.
allowed its system to grant 4-year degrees, but they did limit it to specific areas. I believe there were limits: nursing, automotive, biotech. What's your sense of whether, I think you said it, there should be limits on the types of degrees?
I think to start, I think, you look at with the med school
Right.
at
UCR
UCR.
Med, right.
So I think the nursing program will be excellent. We have a culinary program at RCC, and so taking that and expanding that from a 2-year program to a 4-year program. I've got a daughter that's interested in culinary arts, so as I think about, instead of spending $65,000, you could spend $4,000 or even $7,000 and get that culinary degree and do it here right locally.
And I think about more rural areas of California. Obviously here in Riverside, there's UCR, there's La Sierra,
CBU.
Cal Baptist, and so there are 4-year institutions. But if you go to some rural areas of California, the community college is the only higher education institution within hours.
Right.
And so these folks may not even have the opportunity to get a bachelor's because for whatever reason, they can't move.
Right. And it's about economics. I mean, we know that you're going to make, the average person makes, $1.4 million over their lifetime if they get a college degree. And so I think that anything we can do to ensure that our students have the best education possible, and that education helps them get out of poverty. And so that's what we should be doing. And I think, Bryce Harris is
He's the chairman of the community college here in California.
And that task force that's looking at now, I think the community colleges board should be really taking an active and proactive stance and pushing that message up to the rest of the community.
I was
legislature
actually
doing
shocked when I read that 21 states allow their community colleges to offer some form of bachelor degree. Now, you may know this, but a couple of years ago, Senator Block out of San Diego, he proposed changing the legislation to allow this type of structure, but
Right.
it ultimately died. I wonder if the momentum has shifted.
I think people are afraid of competition, and that's really what it's about.
right.
I mean, you think of the tech schools that are out there that are
a good point.
taking away from the community college. The community college does it. It costs $4,000 there. As I mentioned, I think schools like AI, and which is a great culinary program, but it's probably $35,000 to graduate there from a 2-year program. So I think we've got an opportunity now. The culinary program at RCC is really a great program, and to take that and be able to expand that and expand our nursing program.
Well, I think about nursing specifically
That's
because we
amazing.
know that there's a dearth of nurses in California. We need nurses. It's just that simple.
Biggest shortage.
And with the Affordable Care Act coming online, we really need nurses because they'll be kind of the front line for many seeking primary care. So what do you think? You think it can happen? You think it will happen?
I think if there's enough momentum and noise about it, I think it could happen. I think using the other states as models. I know there's some partnerships happening, like in Orange County.
Right. CSUN, I know. No, CSU LA has a partnership with, I think, College of the Canyons. I mean, there are some partnerships kind of floating around.
But we need our own. We're actually
Right.
doing ourselves. And I think it will, as long as people are aware of it and they understand that we're not the first.
But what about the accreditation issues? Because obviously that changes. Because the community college accreditation is different than a 4-year
Sure.
accreditation. How would that look?
I think we've got enough examples out there where we can actually do it. And I think as long as you look at the people that are at the community colleges now, you're going to have to hire more and different people to do that. But there's a lot of people out there, I think, that would be, especially in the nursing program, there's a lot
What
of
about
people.
fee structure? Should there be a different fee structure for those getting a 4-year degree?
I know there's this thought about, a multi-tiered system for the
Right.
community college. I could see for the second and third year it being maybe half of what you would pay at a Cal State, not the same as for the associate's degree, but I still think it needs to be more affordable than what you would pay at a
That's
Cal State.
ultimately the goal. The point is to try to make it affordable because even though UC and CSU are less expensive than some of their counterparts in other states, and definitely less expensive than private institutions, it's still $12,000 a year for a UC, and that doesn't include
anything else.
Room, board. I mean, it's pricey.
It's too expensive.
Let's go back and talk about K-12. What a difference a year makes. I mean, if we were talking last year, let's say 15, 16 months ago, Prop 30 didn't look like it was going to pass. It has passed. The economy is turning around. Give me a sense, sir, of how K-12 is looking 2013, 2014.
Well, this may sound strange, but because of the local control funding,
that's a separate issue, right?
The more issues you have, the better you're gonna do. So, with Prop 30, it didn't give us any new money; it just stopped the bleeding. And so we're able to look and see who can we bring back to the classrooms, not only at the classrooms, but our other support services, which is essential. That every one of our employees is critical for our students to have the best education.
And let's talk about LCFF, the local control funding formula. That really is a revolution in how education is funded in California. Instead of the categoricals, what we see is money is given to school districts as a base grant, but if the school district educates disadvantaged students, ESL, economically disadvantaged foster kids, they get a bump per student, and then if there is if you educate more than 55% in those categories, you get a big bump.
It's a huge bump.
50%.
Yeah, and so as the kind of was leading this before, we're blessed in one way because now, and we know it's not all about money. Money doesn't solve all our ills, but it does require different resources and support to help those students that fit in those categories.
So Alvord does fall into the concentration grant. You do have 55% above.
We do, and we're already looking at now, how do we take and move Alvord to the next level? And we're looking at creative programs, we're looking at models that they've done in other areas, but it really is about hiring people and making sure.
It's interesting. I'm wondering if there's a counter incentive because you want that extra money. And so you want to classify these kids as disadvantaged, as English language learners. If all of a sudden, you pull them out of the ESL categories, I mean, I guess you don't have a say as to whether someone's disadvantaged or not economically, but it is something I thought about.
Well, I think what we want to do is what's best for students. And so I look at where do we want to have our children to be? And so our dropouts rate are still low, and we know that in order to approach those students that are disadvantaged or the students that are ELL, but to me, it's all about economics.
I want to ask you about Common Core. That is also in the background. I mean, so much going on. LCFF, Common Core. How is Alvord doing with the adoption of these new Common Core standards, which really is changing the way children are educated, not as focused on kind of the standardized, bubbleized testing model, but the more, dig deeper, maybe fewer subjects, but dig deeper.
Yeah, not as wide, but going deeper. Our teachers have been wonderful about the process. They have a little concerned about what things are going to look like in the timelines, but we've already started some programs to help provide additional resources for our staffs.
I know the state had actually offered up $1.25 billion to school districts to help implement Common Core. Has that money flowed?
Well, we know it's coming.
It's coming,
So we're prepared for that, and we've already started some implementation programs. We've already kind of redesigned our report cards to reflect that. I think we probably need to go back and make our report cards simpler, but what we're trying to do is talk to parents about here's what your child should learn and have simple communication with them about what they can expect from them. And I think we're moving in the right direction. I'm thrilled with Common Core.
Have you received pushback?
I had one parent call me about saying, I'm concerned what this means. And my feedback to her is, in California, we're dead last.
Can't get much worse.
Yeah, so why can't we do something now to say we want to at least be competitive, not only at our sisters and brothers just across the state, but when your child goes to college, they're competing with people in other states that are doing better than we are.
And we think about the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. I mean, those schools are just off the chart.
Unbelievable.
They're off the chart.
And then we're still competing nationally, too.
His name is Ben Johnson. He is the vice president of the Alvord School Board, also a candidate for Riverside Community College District. I'm Brad Pomerance. We thank you so much for watching Charter California Edition.